Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Sapna Suman and a Java backend developer with 1 year of experience. In today's video, we are diving deep into two powerful tools for Spring Boot development, which are Loggers and Lombok. If you are tired of writing boilerplate code and want a cleaner, more efficient logging system, then this video is totally for you. So let's start our video. In today's topic, we're going to learn about what is Lombok, why we need Lombok, and how Lombok reduces boilerplate codes, how loggers improve debugging and performance, why do we need them in the Spring Boot. So before moving towards these topics, which are Lombok and loggers, first we will understand what is boilerplate code, right? So here, the boilerplate code is nothing but the repetitive code and standard code that we as a developer must write in almost every project. So these codes are called as boilerplate codes. Like we have the getters methods and setters method, which we use for every private fields, and these methods are necessary, right? We use constructor for that. Like for every classes, we use constructor. Sometimes we use toString methods, equals methods, and hash code, and many more methods like that. So, by writing these codes manually, suppose we have 10 number, like more than 10 fields. So, if we will write manually the getters and setters method or the constructor, right? So, it will be much time consuming. This doesn't need that. Like, suppose if we have something that can replace these lines of code by just writing one annotations, then it would be good. So, like by using the Lombok, we can actually reduce or eliminate the boilerplate code, right? By using this project Lombok. So, before moving towards that, let's understand by an example. Suppose we have a user class. In the user class, we have fields like name, email, age, which are private fields, right? We can also add some their ID, right? ID or something. So these are the private fields. And for this, I have written one constructor, which is all argument constructor, right? It is not all argument constructor. We can actually write it like int ID and then this dot ID equals to ID, right? So this is the constructor, which is all argument constructor. For this, I will have to write the getters and setters method, which is necessary for this code because we have private fields. So let's start writing those codes. Like we have public string get name. It's not that. Get name, and it will return name. If you are using Eclipse, so you can use the shortcut like just right click and then go to source and then generate getters and setters method, and you can use all the fields or whatever fields you want. Just generate it and it is generated for you. Similarly, if you want to generate the constructor or hash code and equals, you can actually use it. But still, you can see it is time consuming. It is unnecessarily it is writing these lines of code, right? So these codes, as we have to write it, it is compulsory for the private fields. So we cannot ignore this. So by using Project Lombok, we can actually remove these lines of code just by using one annotation, which would be very useful for us as a developer, right? So this was all about the boilerplate code, what it is, and why we have to reduce it. Yeah. Now we'll come back to the Lombok. So what is Lombok actually? So Lombok is nothing but a Java library that generates the boilerplate code like getters, setters, constructor, toString, hash code, which I have already explained, and it simplifies our code and makes it more readable, right? And it is like it maintains our code also. And there are few benefits of Lombok, like it eliminates the repetitive code, improve code maintainability, and enhance productivity. As how it is enhancing the productivity, as we as a developer no need to write these lines of code manually. We can just use an annotation, and whatever time we have, we can apply use that time by writing another logic, right? So we have few annotations for that. Like for the getters method, we actually write it manually. We can just use a notation called at the rate getter. It will generate all the getters method for all the fields. Setters method, it will write your setters method for all the fields. We have two string annotation for two string method. We have equals and hash code annotation to write the equals and hash codes. We have varieties of writing constructor. Like we have no argument constructor, we have all argument constructor. We have one more annotation called required argument constructor, which includes all the possibility of the constructor, all the possibility of arguments, right? It will consider the no argument constructor also and the all argument constructor also. We have another annotations called builder and data. Builder is you provides a builder pattern for the project creation and data. Yeah, suppose if we have to write these things, like we have to write getters method also, setters, to string, etc. So instead of writing it individually, we can just use one annotation called data, and it will actually generate all the getters, setters, to string, equals and hash code, and all required argument constructors. Correct. So these are the benefits for using Lombok. We can actually replace our boilerplate codes just by using one annotation. Now, how we can use Lombok in our project? So first, we have to use this dependency in our pom.xml file, and we will have to use the plugin also for that. So here in the pom.xml, I have already added that Lombok dependency, which is here. Here you can see, yeah, I have already added a dependency called Lombok. And I have also added the plugin for the same. Without the plugin, we cannot use that Lombok actually. So let's go to our user class. Here we have already written the boilerplate codes like getters, setters method and all. So to write the getters method, we can just use a annotation which is getters. Yeah, you can see it is imported from the Lombok library, which is jar file actually. Yeah, whatever we add in the pom.xml, no, it comes with a jar file. You can see within the dependencies, Maven dependency, you can actually see these jar files. Yeah, you can see the Lombok also, I guess. So you can search it out later. And as it will generate all the getters method, so we can also use the setters method for the same, right? And we can actually remove these lines of code, which were unnecessary code. Right. And for the constructor, we can use the all argument constructor if you want it. So here you are getting the compile time error because as the all argument constructor will also create a constructor like with all the fields. And here you have manually written all argument constructor. So if you were hover on this, so it will show the duplicate method using user, like whatever data type we have. So either you use the all argument constructor annotation for Lombok, or you can write it manually. So I will just remove it. Correct. And I will use the no argument constructor. I want to use it. Okay. So it will create another constructor by using with no arguments. And as I have already told you, we have one more annotation called required argument constructor. Correct. So if we use this required argument constructor, you will actually get a compile time error because the required argument constructor will create constructors by using all the combinations. So here you can see duplicate methods user of the type. If we are using this, either use that one or use this one. Fine. So this was all about that our Lombok, which can actually remove your boilerplate codes, right? Now we will come back to our thing as we have already understood what is Lombok, why we use it. So let's go to our next topic, which is loggers. Yeah, I'm sure that we must be you guys must be using system.out.println frequently to check whether your flow is correct or not, right? Suppose I do have a controller. So here I can just use, so here I can use that system dot out dot println. I will have to use the caps. System dot out dot println. Correct. We can say it as a. health check health check function. Okay. So suppose if you are getting any error or exception during runtime, you can actually check the logger for that, which will show here, like in the console, right? But you know that using system.out.println for debugging is inefficient, and we don't use it in the industry, right? Instead of using the system.out.println, we actually use loggers. And the loggers provides an optimized, configurable, and better insights, right? And Spring Boot has already given few default logging systems. Yeah, here you can see that I have written that login is an essential part of any Spring Boot application or any kind, like if you take any tech stack, no, logging is mandatory for us, for as a developer. Suppose in the production it is showing any error and you are not able to find it. So if you have already used the Lombok, you can actually see the logs, right, and solve your problem. Right. So logging is an essential part of any Spring Boot application for debugging, monitoring, and tracking application behavior. And Spring Boot already provides built-in logging systems like SLF4J, which is simple logging facade for Java, and logback by default. And we have JUL also, right, which is Java util logging. And we're going to use for today, which is SLF4J. We will use SLF4J for today. Before moving towards the example, we will see few levels of the logging. Like we have few levels, like we have trace, we have debug, info, warn, and error. And the description we can see like trace, it gives you the most detailed level, which is used for debugging already. And we have debug level also. Debugging, it is used for debugging information and useful in development. Info, it is general application flow, which is commonly used in our program. And warn is just, you can see like it will stand for warning. So it indicates the potential problems. And error. You all know that critical errors that needs to immediate action. So for that logging, we can use this level, right? And actually, I can say like these days, I am more like most of the time I use info and the debug level only. And sometimes I use warn and error, but I have never used that trace. Sometimes I use trace in the exception handling only. And we have, okay, before moving to the best practices, we will just go in our code, right? We'll just go here. And instead, as I have already told you that we're going to use this as well as 4J, which is by default given by Spring Boot. So to use that, we will have to use this annotation in our code, which is SLF 4J. SLF, yeah, you can see now stored SLF4J. We will just import it from here. And by default, it gives you a variable called log. So instead of writing system.out.println, you can just use log dot and will give you all the functions which is inside the log. You can say it is a class. I can say it is a class. Like it is, and these methods are non-static methods. So we are using this, sorry, not sure whether it is a static method or non-static method. Okay, so we can use the info here. We have so many like methods, but we will use the info here only. And we can pass anything. So instead of writing this one, we can just copy this and paste it here. And we'll run this code and we'll show it to you. And for this, we can just copy this one, health check, not health check function, this is the sum function, right? Instead of logging like info, you can actually use debug for that. And you can use warn here, log dot warn. This is subtraction function. Okay. I have created the loggers for controller, right? And like first I'll show it to you. I will have to comment few things which I have already added, which I'll show it to you later. Let's run it. Now here you can see the console, like it is compiling all the things. Compiling, compiling. Now, why it is showing any error exception for that? Okay, there are some issues with my database. I'll just solve it. I'll just go here, we'll search the MySQL. I do have actually two versions of MySQL, which is like 55 and MySQL 80. So right now I'm using 80, so I'll just stop the 55 one. Okay, now if I will stop it and again I will run it by using this, it will run properly. Meanwhile, we can just open our Chrome to check. Let's go and check like whether it is, yeah, it has started. Yeah. So I have changed the port number, like default one is 8080, but I have changed the port number to 8081. So let's see this one first, the health check that we have. So the path that we have is controller http colon double slash. I have actually used 8081 and then slash. This will show you the OK here, which means that our function is running correct. Now, here you can actually see the system.out.println is just printing a statement which is health check function. But the loggers that it is not actually printing the whatever the data inside that function. It is just like whatever you can see in console. It is printing like that. Like we have the timing with date, and the loggers level is info. And in which class it is also in which package it is. Like it is showing that, and like now here it is printing that function, right? Suppose if we are using debug here, like debug. So you will actually see like here instead of info, the debug will be there. Like we have two statements. We will have two statements. First one will be info and second one will be debug. Let's hit that code again. So again we have okay no. So yeah, why it is not printing that debug one? Sorry. Okay, the level. Okay, understood. The level that we have already defined, it will take only one level, which is it will take only info or like debug one. We cannot use that both at the same time, right? So this was all about the login, and we can actually store like if you will close this program, so these console like whatever data is there, no, it will become vanish. So we don't want to do that. So we can actually store these console part in a file. So for that, we will use some configuration inside the application.properties file. Here I have already written that. So logging level, I had defined the info one. That is why I was like, yeah, info one. So it will store all the things till info level. And we can store in a file. We can actually define the path here. So I have defined it will create a folder called logs, and there will be a file called application.log. Let's save it and it will rerun, I guess. Yeah, it will rerun and let's do we have any refresh option here? No worries, we can just stop it and we can run it. It is running. Let's say it creates a file called log, folder called logs or not. Let's say it didn't. Okay, maybe we'll have to like there's not any option for refresh here, right? Okay, let's stop it and then we have actually refresh option. It didn't create it, but it should be. Okay, then this one run as maven build claim spring boot colon run. it should actually create a logs folder, and inside that there should be a file named application.logs. It started, but we can't see that. Okay, just restart it. Now we can see that. So meanwhile that is opening, we can actually see the few best practices. Like we never logs users sensitive information or any sensitive information. Like we never logs the user's phone number, for example, user's email, user ID also. Like these information we don't save in our system. And use structured logs instead of plain text. As I had used the plain text, we should not use that. We should use the structured, like use it in a structured manner. And we can actually use the external log management tools to make it more configurable, and you can customize it like depending upon your what uses. So we have ELK and Grafana for the same. And for the configuring logging and application.properties, as I had already shown you that we can actually use the few things like these things to configure the logging file. We can actually use the logback.xml where we can define that all the levels that what you want to store, what you don't want to store, right? So let's run this as a Maven build, clean spring boot colon run, and it will run your project. Let's wait for a few minutes and it will actually create a folder. It's compiling. Okay, it started on port 8080. Let's hit it again. We hit that, and here you can see the logs, but I'm not sure why it is not showing that logs folder. I have just deleted that folder. It will actually create a logs folder. Under that logs folder, we will have a file name called application.log. I'm not sure why it is not showing here right now. Maybe I have deleted it and again it is not creating. But in the next video, I'll definitely show it to you. And why it is not happening? It should. Let me go to my workspace. What was the workspace name? Java internship file. Yeah, here you can see that logs folder we have. Under that logs folder, we have a file name application.log. And here you can see all the information, whatever was printing in the console. Here you can see actually the health check, right? But you can't see that system.out.println statement. It cannot be logged. So that was the I was saying that using that system.out.println will not be efficient. It is not using in the industry, right? Because suppose during runtime you have already application which is running, which is inside the production, and all of a sudden you get any error. So how you want to solve it? So for that you should use that loggers, right? So yeah, let's summarize our topics and we'll take the few takeaways for that. So most probably, the conclusion is that we have already learned how Lombok simplifies the Java development or any kind of development by using any tech stack, and how loggers makes debugging easier. And like we have few takeaways, like we can take that Lombok actually removes the boilerplate code that removes the manual configuration. And instead of using system.out.println, we can actually use the loggers that will provide a structured and efficient logging, right? And it all like there are few benefits for that also. It provides it improves your productivity, so that you don't need to focus the unnecessary codes which you have already you have already some functions that can actually replace that, right? And for logger, it is better than SOP, which is system.out.println. It provides you a more structured, configurable, and optimized logging. And we have the different log levels also. And it like performance optimization, which actually helps in identifying issues without affecting the application performance. And we can actually use the loggers for in the microservice also, right? I'll show you in the next video like how we can use it in the microservice. Correct? So yeah, these were the few takeaways from today's video. And I have a question for you guys. Like, suppose if we have a function and it is final, can we overload these methods or not? Just comment it down and I'll see you. Thank you so much. Bye bye.